Thinking Basketball Podcast. My name is Ben. Welcome back to another episode. And today, I think we're going to have to talk about what has turned out to be a splendid MVP race on a splendid regular season. This has been an amazing regular season with all the happenings and developments and changes and random trades in the middle of the night of superstars like Babe Ruth from, one team to the Lakers. And there's a lot going on. I'm very excited. I told Cody, we told everyone a long time ago about Quentin Grimes being the greatest basketball player of all time. And now look at what is happening. Quentin Grimes is averaging like 32 points a game in the last couple weeks. He had 46 last night. He's completely unstoppable. What do you think?
What team does he play for? The 76ers?
Oh my God. My God. What is going on?
I'm going to be honest, Ben. I haven't tuned into a Philadelphia game in the hottest of seconds, Ben. So I have not seen Quentin Grimes play probably any of those scoring explosion ones. So I'm just going to have to take your word for it.
Yes, you'll take my. What do you mean take my word for it? Like the box scores and the video doesn't exist outside of my brain? That you're convinced this is such a strange story that you're convinced I'm having a fever dream about Quentin Grimes randomly taking over games.
Well, actually, I heard it from you first before the box score. So you told me, and then I could look at the box score. So technically, like you were the first piece of evidence. But I'm corroborating, right? I'm not just taking the stats at face value. I'm also taking what you're saying. And also, Ben, here's the thing. This isn't complaining. This is just stating feelings at the moment. I'm looking like most teams have played like 66, 67, 68 games. And I'm feeling it. I'm like, you know what? We're right at the natural endpoint of the NBA season. We just are. Like at this point, like it's really not much more I need to see. Let's get the playoffs rolling. And again, this is not me complaining about the season. This has been an awesome regular season. I love basketball. I'm watching it. But you can feel it. Like right now, you're like, all right, let's get to the playoffs.
Okay, I was going to do a bit on Quentin Grimes, but you've actually landed in a serious place where I have to do a real rant. Okay, I don't know about you, Cody. I'm very pro regular season.
Yeah.
I think the regular season has a terrible rap. It's part of the sort of negativity that's existing around basketball and the culture and online. Well, I guess online anything is probably skewing negative, but especially negative in basketball, which is one of the reasons why this MVP race has been pretty good. It's not as toxic as some of the past narratives that have randomly popped up to kind of try to take the fun out of great basketball players. But the regular season, man, it's been so good this year. So when the games are good, just there's value in the regular season of itself, just enjoying the games, seeing the developments, new players, trades, most improved players, guys taking leaps in the middle of the season. And this year's regular season has been unbelievable. Endless developments, really high quality play. Then you get the information for the playoffs. So one of the things we've done with member content this year is all these breakdowns of these high level games between top teams, which has been really fun to be able to kind of go into and say like, okay, how does this set us up for a playoff series? How does this actually differentiate teams when we say who's successful against certain types of teams or what happens when you play elite competition? That's all there in the regular season. That's all information for you. So we know the regular season in basketball is super predictive. And the last thing is, yes, each game matters less, but your seeding, your position, your home court, the side of the bracket, that's a big deal. I mean, last year, the Nuggets losing to the Spurs on the last day of the season bumps them into the other side of the bracket, matches them up with Minnesota. Minnesota clearly matches up with them very well. Cough, cough, spoiler for potential playoff matchups this year. And I just think I'm very pro regular season. It doesn't mean you can't want it to be a touch shorter.
Oh, 100%. You just jogged my memory right now. I feel like Denver has been involved in a couple really important final games of the season. Am I recalling correctly? What's the one? Russell Westbrook?
Russell Westbrook?
Sorry, that's confusing. Russell Westbrook prior to playing for Denver. Like, I feel like he had a game where maybe he hit a game-winning three, and that maybe solidified his MVP candidacy.
Yeah.
And they got like a C. Something happened, and I think it was the last game of the season. I think it was between Denver and probably OKC at that point. So we're talking like what, that had been like 2017, 2018.
Yeah, I thought they had one in 2018 or something as well on the very last day of the season. Maybe against Portland. I can't remember that far back. That was another time.
You and I should just go back and forth and recall things that we like 60% remember, and just see how much of the league we can.
60%. In this case, I'm operating at like 20%. So anyway, I don't know where that leaves us. It's just a very, very pro regular season. You know what? I'm not pro. While we're ranting before we get to Shai, I'm not pro places like Reddit doing this thing where they twist information. Remember a couple years ago we had Jaren Jackson. Yes, we had Jaren Jackson Jr. and the block scandal or Stockgate or whatever. So I was watching the Rockets game last night against Quentin Grimes and the Philadelphia 76ers, who also scored they scored like some of the points. He scored most of the points. And at the end of the game, there's this play where Fred VanVleet gets probably fouled. He takes a three and it comes up like 5 feet short, and he's very frustrated, and the Sixers get a run out and someone has a wide open layup, and VanVleet is furious. So he starts sprinting down the court toward the player taking the layup and just lays him out like it's 1988. And they show the replay and it gets upgraded immediately. In watching it, I think I texted the group and I was like, this could be a suspension. That was a crazy foul. And they show the replay. It was a flagrant 1. They upgrade it to a flagrant 2 and eject him from the game. And Reddit posts it and they don't show the full speed of the play. They show this super slow motion replay where they're like, he almost kind of gets the ball as he's swinging, and we're going to stop the replay before we notice that the player he made contact with launched 6 feet into the air, even though he was standing still and jumping. And just like that kind of stuff, I think, where you're continuously negative about stuff like the officials or the state of the game or things like that, like totally in real time, just totally look like a crazy foul to me. But when you only show the super slow motion without any sound and you can't hear the insane slap of the hit that he delivered to the shooter, it completely misrepresents it. So that's my rant for the day.
I'm generally a fan of Reddit. Like, I peruse Reddit NBA stuff. I peruse Blue Sky and whatever else. I don't try and like live on there, but I look around. What is it called when you like don't post a lot, but you look? You're I don't know. There's a term for it.
A human?
Sure. Yeah. Yes. I would like to think there are other things that qualify me for that. But the one thing I noticed is between that and then I think there was a Pistons like Cade situation where he was, I was going to say expelled. My brain's like at 60% capacity right now. When Cade was expelled from the game, I feel like there's a lot of comments that I see in there. It's like highly rated where people are saying things like, these refs need to go back and have these trainings. These refs need to be blah, blah, blah. Listen, I watch a lot of NBA games, right? I think you watch a lot of NBA games.
I don't. It's a mystery. Yeah.
Refs are pretty good, Ben. I don't walk away from a lot of games being like, wow, the refs really suck. Like, they dropped the ball. I'm not trying to be like Captain Pro Ref here, but generally I don't feel their impact across lots and lots of basketball games. So I don't know. Those are some big, powerful statements I see people getting behind. And I'm like, I'm not sure if we need to like go that far.
So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he plays basketball and draws a lot of fouls, doesn't he, Cody?
That's a professional segue.
Professional
segue if I've ever seen one. Did people disagree with your conclusion of your grifter or genius YouTube
What
video?
Conclusion? I left it up for them to decide. You're not going to change anyone's mind on
what was the
topic.
title of that video? Because people seem to really not feel that.
Grifter or God?
Yeah, grifter or God. And I feel like here's the thing. Here's what I appreciate about that video. You explored that, right? Like, a lot of times, because people, I don't know what the difference between engagement baiting and clickbaiting is.
You mean that's what the video was about? It was actually about the title?
But I watched it and I'm like, this is just a good title. Like, this just explains what I'm about to go into. So anyway, that I found that nice from you to be very clear with what your content was about.
Well, I think there are a lot of people that are rightfully frustrated about some of the embellishments. I thought a lot of the comments were really insightful. You had people saying things like, it's not necessarily traditional grifting, it's embellishing, and that's not great. Other people were saying, man, I expected it to be worse. This is a lot of hoopla about real fouls. Like, you're saying he's embellishing, but it's a real foul. So what are we doing here? And I feel that. This is what happens when I eat lunch during the show. I almost choke on live television. This is great. So, I'm going to pass it back to you as I get my thoughts straight.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the main point, though, that we're trying to get to today is we have this great MVP matchup. And like you kind of said at the top, it feels like, and maybe it's because I'm avoiding a lot of the traditional sorts of conversations around it, it doesn't feel particularly toxic between Jokic and Shai, right? Like I'm not seeing some crazy takes about the two. And it feels like reasonably people across the board are like, yeah, Jokic is kind of an all-time dude. He's kind of been an all-time dude for years now. He could probably win it every year. But also what Shai's doing is ridiculous. And the Thunder's team is pretty fantastic and might be the favorite. And if they're not the favorite, they're at least in the top 2 or 3 for favorites. So between like those two things, like we just have a couple of great candidates. And I know you and I have talked a lot about Jokic over the last few years. Like he's one of the most exciting, like when you think about where he comes from in terms of being drafted in the second round, and all of a sudden he's just one of the greatest offensive players ever. That's such a cool story. Like that's worthwhile for us to talk about as much as we have. But I think today we want to talk a little bit more about Shai because we've touched on it a little bit, right? You have the video about him. We've brought him up a fair amount. But I think we want to go a little bit deeper on Shai, maybe a little bit deeper on the actual battle between these two for MVP and maybe contextualize it. Because, of course, we gotta say some old players, Ben. We got to bring up some retired NBA players, or else it wouldn't be a real Thinking Basketball podcast.
Why do we have to do that? Why do we have to bring up, we're just going to say old names? Is that what you're saying is on track for today?
I'm on the sometimes you're on the Basketball Reference homepage, and it just gives you Nate Wolters. And I'm like, man, it's a Bucks legend right there.
I don't even know who that is. That's unbelievable. Yeah. What are we doing today? We are talking about, I don't know what's happened to this show. This feels like we're off the rails already. We're like 5 minutes into the show. And I said this was going to happen. I said this whole idea of discussing Shai and Jokic, who are just they're having a great MVP race, which we've now said 4 times without actually diving into the analysis that we wanted to record.
All right, here's where I want to start with these two right now, right? Because when you look at the regular season, that's where we are, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. We're coming off a playoff season from Shai. That was pretty good. Like, he was good in the playoffs, but he's definitely not at the level that we've seen right now. But if you look into the thinkbasketball.net database, right, box plus minus, it's got like a plus 8.5, which if you look all time, if you play around with some of the all-time numbers, that's literally like top 10. It might even be top 5 ever in the regular season. His offensive metrics off the chart. He's scoring hyper efficient. I shouldn't say hyper efficiency. That's like Steph Curry 2016 type of stuff. But he's scoring very efficiently on extremely high volume, on a creation burden for his teammates, unlike that we've seen from a lot of these other high flying scoring type of guys. And I think it's time to start actually asking, like, compared to the other great offensive guards in history, where does Shai stack up? Like, where realistically are we talking about in terms of what we're seeing from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander this season?
You know what I'm already getting vibes of when you ask that? I'm getting vibes of about 3 or 4 years ago when we asked these questions about Jokic. And then you get this endless chorus of, like, cool it. Wait till he does something in the playoffs. He's not that good. You guys are drunk. You're overrating him. That's what it feels like lately when someone makes this ascension. And again, it goes back to the comment I was making earlier about the culture being very negative. It's like, this guy is incredible. And I'm not sure people have really tuned in yet to how incredible he is. There's a lot of amazing numbers. My favorite I'll save for you in a minute. But one of the things we couldn't get to in the video, was sort of cut for time, is the following stat, Cody. This stat blew my mind. If you look at field goal percentage inside 8 feet on heavily contested shots, okay? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is 7th in the league. He shoots 52% or something like that, 55%. I can't remember the number, but he's 7th in the league with a very good number inside 8 feet. He's 5th outside 8 feet on his 2-pointers, 52% from 9 to 23 feet on his contested 2-pointers. He's the only player in the league in the top 7 or top 10 or top 15, I think, of that category. Someone else might be like 16th in both or something, but he's in the top 7 in both. And it's just like, when you look at his drive game and you look at the way he moves with the basketball, some people in the comments of the video were saying there's some Allen Iverson, there's some Manu Ginobili, the movement patterns, the slipperiness, the handle. He just feels to me like he's playing at a different level. So to pick up with your point about the playoffs last year, I thought he was really good in the playoffs last year. We said during the series, like, he's holding up his own for the young team. It's the other guys who are slacking behind a little bit. And to me, he's been much better this year. He's incredible.
Okay, so what I want to say, I want to defend myself preemptively here. I don't mean to say that Shai didn't have a good playoffs last year, but he's not having a playoffs that is equal to the regular season he's having right now. Right?
He's better now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a clear and necessary distinction right now, because what we're seeing in the regular season is what we kind of want to see to get into the playoffs at some point. Maybe we'll touch on that particular point in just a second. But talking a little bit more about the efficiency that you were talking about, I was trying to look at this historically too. And when I think of guards that are really good at scoring inside the three-point line historically, like immediately one of the first guys that comes to mind where we might have that data is this little dude by the name of Michael Jordan, right? You ever hear of him? You know, Michael Jordan, baseball player.
I think he did Hanes commercials.
Yep, Hanes actor. He was in this movie called Space Jam that was about his burgeoning baseball career. Anyway, you should go back and check him out. He's a pretty fascinating guy. Anyway, if you look at the volume of two-point attempts that Shai has taken this year, and then you compare it to every other guard in the NBA, right? You literally sort in Basketball Reference by all of the guards, and then you figure out what the relative or the average two-point percentage is, right? If you stack Shai up against all of them and you graph it, he's far to the right of everyone, right? There's a nice little gap between him and number 2 and number 3, and he's 7 percentage points better than league average on twos. You're just going to have to take my word for it, but basically no one else in the top 20-ish of guards is even close to that, right? Like that's really efficient and really good for a guard. So I was like, oh, how does this stack up actually against somebody like Michael Jordan? So I got a 3-year sample. I think this was back from 1988 through 1991, right? And again, just stacking up all the two-point shots from guards, seeing where Michael Jordan lays out. And guess what? Far to the right of everyone else, 7 percentage points better than league average. So when we're talking about his ability to finish efficiently inside the three-point line, it is not hyperbole to say that Shai is doing it at the level of Michael Jordan at his peak across a couple of seasons. Again, that's across 3 seasons. So, you know, that's some excellent stuff, Michael Jordan. But when you speak relatively, like Shai is quite honestly at that level of finishing when you get inside the three-point line.
Yeah, that's very good. I'm trying to take that all in because well, I guess I'll give it to you. We, as you know, we run these stats around here where we look at how players perform with a star teammate off the court and with a star teammate on the court. And of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of runs that I have in a database somewhere, including all the best scorers that you could imagine in this era, you're talking about since 1997, Kobe Bryant, Joel Embiid, LeBron James, Steph Curry, James Harden, Kevin Durant, the absolute highest scoring rate I've ever seen in a sustained run like that, meaning at least 750 minutes played in this case without another star teammate or something like that. The highest scoring rate I've ever seen that we've had is James Harden in 2020. He played about 1,000 minutes without Russell Westbrook, and he averaged 40 points per 75. Yes, he averaged 40 points per 75 on plus 7% true shooting. 40 points per 75 on plus 7% true shooting. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah. Can I ask, is Kobe Bryant's, what is that, the 2005?
2006.
2006.
Yeah, he was about 36
okay
per 75 without Lamar Odom, who's the other sort of most dominant player or highest usage player, I should say, on that team. Cody.
Yep.
That was the number until Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's season this year, where he is now at 41 points per 75 when Jalen Williams goes to the bench. And he's doing it on like plus 10%. He's at 67% true shooting. Might be at 9%. I can double check it in a second. But that is with almost 1,000 minutes without Jalen Williams. That is the highest number I've ever seen. That we've, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm forgetting a player. Maybe I've checked everyone. You know, maybe Antoine Walker has one that beats it. No one has a number that beats it. It's the highest number ever, probably. And so when we talk about the skill level and what we're actually seeing, I don't think it's hyperbole to put it at the very, 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 very top of guards in NBA history.
All right, so this is what's so fascinating about it, because if we wind the clock back like 9 years, well, almost a decade at this point, we have the 2016 barrage from Steph Curry, right? And that revolutionizes the game. We see this 3-point explosion. Everyone's like, oh, everyone's going to be a Steph Curry coming in. We're going to see tons of them. But now we're 10 years later, And the best offensive guard we have right now is decidedly not Steph Curry in the way that he plays basketball. Like, they could not have like a more different stylistic way of scoring the basketball and being on the court. So let me ask you, Ben, just from your deep scouting, what you've seen from Shai, we've thrown up some numbers that are pretty incredible. What does he do that makes himself just so unbelievably dominant without being this like off-ball three-point shooting machine?
Well, I mean, I think it's everything that we hit in the video. His change of pace and his movement patterns and his change of direction and his handle and his ability to have sweet spots everywhere all add up to basically make it impossible to take him away from where he wants to go. And if you think about the great 2-point shooters of yesteryear, one of the things that's often discussed is like, I want to get to my sweet spots. You know, I want to get in my comfort zone, one dribble left. I want to catch in this area at the elbow where I'm really comfortable and I can face. I want to get a back to the basket possession at 12 feet. And, you know, I'm aware of where the defense is. And if they don't come, I'm going to go into this move in my bag. Shai is just like the whole floor. And he's just constantly zigzagging all over the floor. You know, we had some of those diagrams in the video to kind of emphasize that you can go someplace and he's going to go in the other place. And he's just right now, you add to the fact that he's just this incredible ball handler as well. And he's pretty strong in the core and the deceleration is off the charts. Like, I don't know how he does it. Sometimes I watch him decelerate on one leg and I tear my own ACL just from watching it. I'm like, how does the human body do that? So yeah, I think it's pretty unstoppable.
The point that you just brought about finding his spots, it always makes me think back. It's probably my favorite analytics piece that's ever come out. It's definitely not the first time I've referenced it.
Michael Lewis?
Yep, the 2009 No Stats All-Star article about Shane Battier. And he always talks about like, oh, I defended these, like I made Kobe Bryant go this direction. I made Allen, like so-and-so goes this direction like twice as many times. And if he goes this way, he's going to shoot. And he's always said, or he says in the article, the Manu Ginobili is the one guy where it doesn't matter which way you guard him. He's equally efficient. Like you can make him go right. You can make him go left. He's going to pull up. He's going to make it to the basket. Shai feels like the same way. Like there's no end to where you chase him. Like if you get Shai somewhere, he's just going to figure out how to like slither by you. Like there's never been a player that more embodies slithering than anyone else that I've ever seen. Like the way, like you said, it's the ACL thing, but there are some like screenshots that you've sent. I swear his like ankle is touching the floor. Like he breaks his own ankles on some of these to get by people. And of course, being able to embellish some of those foul calls, get to the free throw line. He's like a 90% free throw shooter. That's ridiculous in itself.
Literally, yeah.
Literally a 90% free throw shooter. But that doesn't account for how efficient he actually is when he gets to these spots. Like some of these finishes he gets when he gets around the basket are left-handed, right-handed, scoops, taking contact, pulling back, stepping. It's unbelievable. Like there isn't a way where when I watch somebody guard him one-on-one where I'm like, oh, you should make him do this. It doesn't matter. He's just going to get somewhere else where he's equally comfortable scoring.
So I think this is the playoff question because one of the videos we have for members, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball, or if you just want the videos, you can get it as a YouTube member. When you go to patreon.com, you get all the other, fun stuff that we use, stats and things like that. One of the things that we have in this upcoming video is we do the Shai piece, and then we have this spillover that says, well, how do you stop it in the playoffs? Because I think he's kind of reached a level where you can't just guard him straight up. And so what teams are now starting to do is they're starting to throw different junk defenses at him, blitz, trap, switch, and then switch to trap and weird zones and things like that. They're just doing anything because if you play him traditionally, I'm not sure how many people or how many teams in the world can contain him. I left out the best part of the stat with Jalen Williams on the bench. I left it out because it's in the spirit of an MVP type discussion. And we do want to contextualize Shai and Jokic this year. We want to get to Jokic, and we do want to contextualize some of the other great, offensive players or great MVP races right now. Shai, I mentioned the scoring numbers. Cody, the offensive rating in the nearly 1,000 minutes without Jalen Williams is 128. That's Oklahoma City's offensive rating when Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is doing this. So, by the way, they're outscoring teams by 22 points per 100 possessions in those 1,000 minutes. 22 points per 100 possessions in those 1,000 minutes. He ramps up his playmaking. He ramps up his free throw attempts. He ramps up his 3-point shooting and shoots 40% on his threes. I deliberately did not put a single three in the last Shai video just for artistic license. It was just all twos because now he's really good at threes as well. And so teams are trying different coverages. The Pistons, it was really cute. If you didn't see the Pistons game, that was one of the best regular season performances I've seen from a scorer in a long time. Shai made 13 of his last 15 shots over the final 2+ quarters and scored 39 points in the final 2+ quarters of the game. And the Pistons, I say it's cute because they were like, we have Asar Thompson. We'll put him on him. No, you won't. It won't work. We have Dennis Schroeder. We'll just have Dennis Schroeder face guard him around. So now you're starting to see more teams giving him the Steph Curry, like we're going to face guard him. And I think the Thunder are content playing 4-on-4 if Shai's just going to go stand out on the wing and someone's going to glue themselves to him and they kind of have more space to work with. So yeah, I don't know exactly what the playoffs will bring, but that's where my mind is at this point with this type of player, where they're having to throw different coverages at him. Because the one thing I would, like put money on is if they play him straight up in the playoffs, he's going to barbecue you. That's for sure.
Adding on to the Jalen Williams thing, right now there's 6 games this season where Jalen Williams didn't play and Shai did play, right? 6 games where that happened.
Mm-hmm.
In the games entirely, not just when Shai is on the court. They're 6-0 and they're plus 19 in those games. Like they're missing their second best guy and it just doesn't matter. They have an offensive rating of 125 in those games. Like he's just a one-man like monster. He's a one-man crew. One stat that I find really interesting, and I guess it's kind of a collection of stats. I'm going to try and contextualize it in a way without saying all of them. But again, I was really interested. If we're really going to start talking about this guy in like literal all-time sorts of categories, you got to go to the top. Like you got to go to Michael Jordan, right? So I'm like, all right, let's line them up a little bit. So I picked 1991 for Michael Jordan, right? Now I was looking at the regular season and this year's regular season from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And the scoring and the efficiency are pretty close. Like Shai's actually outpacing him in volume a little bit. Jordan's outpacing him a little bit in efficiency. And I'm like, all right, so he's on track there. But then where I'm like, oh, this is really fascinating. Box creation, the stat in thinkingbasketball.net, is sort of this estimate of how many shots you create for teammates per 100 possessions. Shai's closer to 15, while Jordan's like closer to 9. And again, there's a lot of context here. You don't see this huge explosion in box creation in guard types of creators until later on. That's a more modern sort of aspect of an offensive game here. But what happens in the playoffs then is Michael Jordan's box creation goes from about 9 to 15.5, like a higher number than what Shai is putting up right now. And Michael Jordan's passer rating, an estimate of how good his passes are on the court, also leaps up from like 6.4, which is good, to like 8.5. That's an incredible ability to pass the ball. And so you see Michael Jordan, somebody who I think there's a lot of rhetoric at that time that's like, oh, you can't get this score first guy to win a championship. All of a sudden the chips are down. He's creating for everyone. He's making all these passes. He's making great reads. To me, that is the level I want to see from Shai. What happens? Because at this point, you can't take him one-on-one. It's like Michael Jordan. You can't just send one guy at him and be like, hey, we're just going to handle it this way. Shai's too good for that. What happens when you deliberately have double teams, more complex defensive schemes? That's just like you're going to get multiple bodies all the time, and we're going to force you to create for everyone else. You're going to force you to trust your teammates to pass the ball and do what we need to do, and hopefully try and get you out of the play as much as possible. I know defenses aren't that simple, but that is the level I want to see from Shai when we get into the playoffs.
Well, the one thing I'll say on that is that he doesn't force a lot of stuff. So when he's been getting all these coverages, he's very willing to draw the two defenders toward him and then try to get the ball to the sweet spot or soft spot in the defense and then let that teammate play from there. And I think it makes a big difference who that teammate is. Teams want to funnel the ball to, Aaron Wiggins and Alex Caruso, and the Thunder want to funnel the ball to Jalen Williams and Isaiah Hartenstein, who his passing and all that stuff is just fantastic. But I think at this point, that's the level we're talking about. And it's just sort of a wait and see for the playoffs to see what defenses can throw at them, whether they can find an answer, and then what kind of counter Shai and the Thunder can come up with. It's really interesting, though, Cody, because in the context of an MVP race, he's having this great individual year, playing at a very high level objectively. And then you also get the fact that the Thunder are literally posting the best margin of victory in NBA history. So you have the team box checked as well. But then with Jokic, you can make the argument, as we did last week, that he's a better offensive player, that he's still the best overall player in the league. And the Nuggets may finish second despite all kinds of injuries and losing their bench and, Jamal Murray not being right for a little while. And that in and of itself is absolutely incredible when you look at Jokic's performance. And of course, we've talked about this before where they don't have great backup centers. So it might inflate the sort of on-off situation. But I mean, you mentioned it last week. The on-off situation for Jokic is absolutely incredible, meaning that when his team is on the court, they are in the 94th percentile in net rating. They outscore teams by about 11 points per 100. And when he goes to the bench, it goes to the bottom of the league because they're 20 points worse. They're outscored by 10 points per 100. So it's like you have this very fascinating thing where you have potentially strong team narratives for both players. You have really great objective, like, is he the best player narrative for both players? And then you also have the great individual seasons where Shai is doing all this stuff. And as we just mentioned, like hitting some benchmarks that are quite historic. And of course, Jokic has plenty of benchmarks that are quite historic, like, a center averaging a triple double or whatever the heck is going on there. What he's averaging 13 boards. And he's top 3 in every category, right?
Yeah.
I think that's never been done. Top 3 in scoring, top 3 in rebounding, and top 3 in assists. So it's really, you and I have been very vocal about this before. We don't really narrow in on one particular player. You just have like different perspectives that you could crown a player and give him MVP. But the race itself and the quality of the top players, I mean, it's so reflective of the great regular season. I think it's really incredible.
I think what's really cool about them is they are 2 offensive players right now. Like I was just talking about with Shai, Jokic isn't unsolvable at that point. You can't play him straight up because he'll just kind of back you down his little like going back and forth, and all of a sudden he's at the basket and scores. And if he misses, he just Z-bounds himself to a basket in there. And he's waiting for you to send more help. He's waiting for the defense to shift because that's when he's really at his best, right? So I think that going back and putting full circle there, Jokic has that part solved. And we've seen it in the playoffs where it's like, yeah, teams have done okay against him, but he still is unsolvable, basically. And if somebody's good, like Jamal Murray, if he's going next to Jokic, like they're basically unbeatable, right? And so, that's what we want to see go into the playoffs. Like, are the other guys going to keep up with Jokic? You want to jump in there?
Yeah, well, you think that I don't think the Nuggets are unbeatable. Yeah.
Oh, I don't mean that. I'm saying that if Murray's really going, that offensively they seem unstoppable.
Offensively, they're unstoppable, but you landed in a very interesting place. I wasn't being pedantic because part of the question I think that people will vote on and ultimately we will reflect on for decades about this type of season and these types of players is the defensive side with Denver. Mm-hmm. And so we've talked a lot about Jokic's defense over the years and some of his underrated strengths and why we I think you and I both agree that he's around neutral or maybe slightly positive as a defender. He has some things that are very underrated, very, very smart, great communicator, positional, hands, yada, yada, yada. But last year, certainly 2 years ago, Denver demonstrated the ability to be an above average, sometimes very good defense, mm-hmm. and that crested into the playoffs and took them to a championship. Last year, remember, they were a really good team last year. They had a great regular season. They were incredible at home. They were incredible in close games. And their defense was good at times. It had certain good indicators that KCP, Aaron Gordon, Jokic, Murray, Michael Porter Jr. lineup. Like those were all really impressive metrics around them. You get to this season, Cody, and it has not been so good. You continue to pluck away at the depth and you add some of the injury things that I've talked about. Both, I think Michael Porter Jr. has had some issues. Jamal Murray's had some defensive issues, maybe the motor, the conditioning, things like that. And so then you go, okay, well, is this just a particularly bad situation where you want someone like Jokic to be able to help a little bit more out of the center position if you're weak defensively? I just think the defensive question mark is a thing that some voters will probably index on.
I think something that's interesting, though, is you talk about the drop-off in their defense this year. And this is the worst defense we've seen from them in years, right? Especially relative to league average. But it's also the best offense we've seen from a Jokic team ever. Honestly, right now it's 5.8 points better than league average, which is ridiculously good. They've crested 120 as a team. So I wonder how much is somewhat of a trade-off, being like, all right, we have, Aaron Gordon's out. We're still trying to figure out some kinks defensively. We're going to lean into the offense. I don't know, again, if it's that simple, but there does seem to be just sort of this shift. Like you look at the SRS, right, the simple rating system over in Basketball Reference, and they're technically better regular season wise than they were in their championship season. Last year was the best of the Jokic years. So that's one of the things where it's like, all right, is the offense going to carry to the playoffs? Is that something they're going to be able to plug up, or are they actually going to go in to just be more unstoppable offensively, and that's going to kind of carry them more?
To be fair, the year they won the title in 2023, the league was very smashed together, and there was a lot more parity. And this year, as we've talked about, we've had a number of bottom feeding, teams that just pump wins into the league, and so you get a lot of this like, hey, are two teams going to win 70 games between the Thunder and the Cavs and things like that? So I don't know if it's a perfect one-to-one comparison relative to the league environment or relative to the other playoff teams in an environment, but it's a very interesting data point because the offense has been fantastic.
Let me ask you something then, because you just said did your whole bit on Jokic on defense and whatnot. And obviously we know that the Thunder's defense is ridiculous. You look at the personnel, Lou Dort, right? J-Dub, Chet Holmgren, Harden, like all these guys out there, just nuts. How good do you actually think Shai is defensively? Like, again, we're talking about like Michael Jordan, whatever else. Maybe that's the offensive side. Like, if we're trying to get Shai to be the top of the top for guards ever, how does the defense stack up?
I think it's good. I think he's a better defender than Jokic, but I wouldn't say Michael Jordan. Yeah. Somewhere in between those two.
See,
something like that.
I find it really complicated. It's really tough to judge somebody when they're surrounded by such good defensive talent, because you watch these Pistons teams or whomever else that don't necessarily have like a ton of talent all over the place. You can hide them. It's so easy to hide them because you have these other attack dogs that can go other places. And I think in general, like Shai, he's much bigger and longer than most point guards, right? He's got great instincts. He's got great length. He can react and things like that. So you have the team defense thing down. But when I watch him, I'm not necessarily thinking like, yeah, I'd throw this guy an all defense vote. Like, I don't think he's that good. He's certainly a positive, right? I just don't know how much of a positive. Like, is he just cracking over it, or is he just like, you know what? Like, here, they're very different. But how would you compare to somebody like Jaylen Brown, one of our favorite guys to bring up? Who would you say is a better defensive player?
I feel like they have really different defensive strengths and weaknesses. Really different defensive.
That's why I bring him up. That's why I bring him up.
Yeah, I might lean Shai a little bit. I think Shai's strengths are more in the team setting and passing lanes and playmaking defensively and switches and then using length and things like that. Jaylen can get a little sleepy off ball, but then, the strength that we talked about in the Jaylen podcast, just physically on ball, I think really helps in a playoff setting and gives him versatility for matching up with bigger players. So, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting comparison, and that I think they're kind of in the same ballpark defensively. But I think off the top of my head, I would say Shai's a little bit better than, yeah. You buy that?
I buy it. I don't know if I agree with it. I really like Brown's strength. I like his switchability. I like the way that he can go one-on-one. Maybe I'm overrating that a little bit, but it's close. That's why I bring them up, because they're so
I think
different.
It's close.
Yeah,
I think it's close. I like how we got this far, and I think originally we were going to ask this at the beginning before we just completely went off the rails. Part of the reason we got into this episode is because we've brought up Jokic a couple times in prior episodes, and then we never ended up answering this question of like whether he's having the best regular season in NBA history, whether it be offensive or overall. Is he just like the best regular season offensive player we've ever seen? I don't want to go too hard into the regular season part because it introduces these things of like, well, you guys are usually thinking about the playoffs. So do we bring James Harden in? Is James Harden really the best regular season offensive player ever? And what he did in Houston is Karl Malone actually a top 5 regular season offensive player? I don't want to go too hard into that. Although if you want to nominate one of those players, I'll be happy to discuss it. But I mean, the type of season he's having has been kind of insane. It's been totally insane. He now makes shooting inside 10 feet look like a Nerf hoop game where if he doesn't go in 70% of the time, you're surprised. 70% of the time he's making shots inside 10 feet. It's ridiculous, or whatever the number is, 68%. And of course, the other thing that I think has helped him this season in particular is, if you believe him, he's just leveled up his shooting with this one simple trick that he learned on Serbian YouTube or something. And now he's shooting 41% from three right now. And I don't know where this stabilizes in the long term. I don't know if he legitimately made a meaningful change to the way he shoots threes, but the volume, I believe, is a career high, and the efficiency is 41% as of recording this. And when you put all those things together, I mean, I think it's a fair question. I don't know how much you want to get into it, but I think it's a big question. I think it's a fair question. Is the best offensive player we've ever seen in a regular season?
The shooting thing is really, really interesting, because I feel like for a period of time he was shooting like 48% from three. Like
you mean after the bubble?
Yeah, no, I mean like
this year,
the first half of the season.
Yep.
Shooting like 40, and we were like, if this is the case, then this is just the best offensive season we've seen. It's tapered a bit. I thought I saw a stat where the past however many games he's only shooting like 32%, and it feels like there are times recently they kick out to him, and there's a maddening amount of plays. Like there's one recently where he catches it. I don't even remember who they were playing. It all blends together at this point in the season. He's wide open for a second. He's like, you know what? I'm actually going to kick to Russell Westbrook, who's wide open 17 feet from the basket, to take that mid-range jumper. And there's a lot of those times where I'm like, just fire, please, just fire. I know you want to move the ball around, but take that three. That's not enough to like really change how I feel about it, but I would like to see Jokic pull from there a bit. For my money, we're talking about the greatest regular season offenses ever from a player. I feel like the standard before this would have been 2016 Curry. Like, to me, that feels like the best regular season offense I've ever seen. And the way that their styles are so different makes it really hard for me to clearly say if one is better than the other. What do you think about that?
I think that's fair. To me, 2016 Curry is probably the gold standard. I mean, he's the only modern player to lead the league in scoring volume and scoring efficiency, and he did it in a year where he was kind of carving up defenses, so to speak. I don't think he had the same amount of latent value in 2016 explicitly, because teams hadn't fully cued into the fact that they need to bend everyone toward him, but he still had some. He absolutely still had some. And when you look at the numbers, historic kind of on-off, historic kind of levels of top-end performance, historic scoring, historic volume shooting. I think that's probably the gold standard. And so, yeah, but I do think this season has to be in contention. I don't know if there's any explicit numbers that look at that, like impact metrics that try to make an apples to apples comparison or something that could really shine more light on it. But in my head, it's a conversation.
It is one of my favorite kind of philosophical points I like to bring up with him is, if you think about the relative value that a league average point guard would bring, right, on the offensive side, I think the gap between that and somebody like Steph Curry is not as wide as the gap between the relative value a center would bring from league average to Nikola Jokic, right? So even though, like, if we think in absolute terms, maybe 2016 Steph Curry was a little bit higher, but if you think about being able to slot in your five man, like, you get your center out there, right? It's like, who am I going to run, Samuel D'Alembert or, Nikola Jokic? Like, that's an enormous gap offensively, right? So maybe if you look at it that way, you could make it's like what we see with Karl Anthony Towns with the New York Knicks, right? Like, what he brings at the five position just screws up everything for the other team defensively on the other end, right? So maybe if you take that argument, that would be the best case in my mind for Jokic. But beyond that, I don't know if I can like slam my fist on the table and say one of these is clearly better than the other. But in my mind, I feel like these are the two best.
Don't you think you're giving up defense there, though? Don't you think you could just as well like play someone? I mean, they used to have Paul Millsap next to him, right? Like you could find someone who could be his Evan Mobley, and then he's really, because Jokic is like, offensively, what does it mean to be the center in today's basketball? It doesn't really mean anything. So you're really lining up something defensively. And I think if you had a more ideal construction, then he wouldn't be like your top highest value, quote unquote, five at center. He would, be a position down or whatever you could get away with. So I hear what you're saying, but I feel like even with that, it's kind of like the Cat thing. It's like, if Cat's a center, does that make him better offensively than if he's a power forward where the team is possibly better? It gets weird.
My counter to that would be the way that you see Gordon playing with Jokic, you squeeze so much more value out of that. Like Towns, if you put him next to another four that's going to take the defensive burden, he's not necessarily going to make that four-man so much better, right? But if you have somebody like, like you just said, Evan Mobley or Aaron Gordon, like we see, think of how many more efficient shots they're going to be getting, like Aaron Gordon lob fest. I think back to the 75-foot inbound play where Jokic just gets it. I think this is last season, just like throws it 75 feet, and Gordon, he eats those sorts of opportunities because of Jokic. So I think that's a good point, but Jokic gets the most out of that four guy compared to anyone else that you'd be able to put out there.
Do you think Jokic has had any other material changes this year compared to his prior seasons?
Man, that's such a tough question. I don't necessarily know. Like, I don't think I watch him that closely to really say definitively if I've noticed anything. Have you noticed anything?
No, I think just the shooting for me.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned 2016 Steph Curry. I think if you look at some of the great pairings of offensive players we've had, or overall players we've had, certainly 2016 and 17, you had LeBron and Steph Curry both playing at a very high level in the heart of their prime. 2002, you had Tim Duncan and Shaquille O'Neal. 1993 or early 90s, you had Jordan and Hakeem, although Hakeem really had a great turnaround in 1993. In the 80s, you had Magic and Larry, or Jordan and Magic in certain seasons. In the 70s, you had Kareem and Walton for a year or two before Walton got hurt. In the 60s, and heck, in 1964 alone, you had Wilt Chamberlain with an incredible year, Bill Russell with an incredible year, and Oscar Robertson with an incredible year. That Oscar gets the MVP that year. The 1990 MVP race is legendary. The 2008 MVP race is legendary. So a lot in terms of historical context. Like I think this is yet another one of those years with two really great players, and the MVP race itself has a lot of argumentation on each side for each guy.
I kind of went into this thinking that this is maybe the best MVP race we've ever seen. I'm like, I wonder how this stacks up. But when you actually go through,
and then you saw some of these old ones,
you're like not even that old. Like you go back 15 years, you're like, wow, these are some good races. But
yeah,
one of that I kind of stumbled across, and I found, I'm like, wow, what a year! This would have been incredible. But if you go to 1972, Lakers win 69 games, Bucks win 63. Kareem wins the MVP, putting up 34 points, 16 rebounds, and 4 assists. And then do you know who finishes second and third? Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West, who were teammates at the time for that team, right? So the top three come from two teams, and two of them basically cannibalize each other, and the level of skill between all those. And I know Wilt's on the downward trend at that point, but we're talking like hyper efficient, just grabbing rebounds and moving around sort of thing. Jerry West is still doing his thing at a very high level, but I think some of those Kareem races are really fascinating. You get like 1988, like between Jordan, Magic, and Bird, like not quite peak Jordan, but he's like fanatical all over the place defensively. Magic and Bird are probably closer to the peak than we'll see at that point. And Celtics are winning 57. Lakers have 62 wins. Bulls down to 50. I don't know, man. There are so many good races in NBA history that I don't even know how to contextualize how good this is. I just know that these are two extremely good players. This is a really fun MVP race, and I'm glad people haven't spoiled it because we just need to enjoy how awesome these guys are.
We have a question from the audience. How close is Shai to his best possible situation? How close is Shai to his best possible situation? I think I've commented on this before. I think he's in a great situation. One, Mark Daigneault, to me, is an unbelievable coach. Two, Shai has been there for a long time. And so over the years, organically, front offices and coaches will tinker and organize the offense or even the team construction around its best player to some degree. And in his case, it feels symbiotic in the sense that as Shai developed as a scorer and as an isolation player, Daigneault was like, hey, how do we create more space in the middle of the floor for you to be a better isolation player and a better penetrator, which are your strengths? And then Shai just kept getting better and better and better. Now he's got the step back three, the pull up three. He's even better off the handle. He's better on the drive. He's better in the mid range. He's better in the short mid range. And so I think in some sense, this is a great situation. It's near optimal. Who knows if you could actually diagram what his best, like perfect situation with other teammates would look like. But to me, it's a similar thing that happened with Jokic. It happens to so many of the great players. The Nuggets realize over time, like, oh, we should actually just build the whole offense should just be Jokic. Like, he doesn't have to take 30 shots, but he should just be in the middle of the floor, involved in the action all the time. And this is happening at the same time that Jokic, this guy with this strange basketball background, who's a second round pick, who, had to come off the bench for Denver's first round center, who was picked over him for a while before they finally realized it. Jokic goes, okay, maybe I should just try to score all the time, or at least get the ball, or I can get it back. I can go set screen. Let's just play like that. And it symbiotically all comes together like that. And I think that's really common with what happens with great players.
Let me ask you a question here, kind of building off that, because you're talking about his strengths, driving, scoring, and isolation. Historically, where would you place Shai as a scorer off the drive, right? Somebody that can just, like, you just give the ball to somebody and you're like, hey, we need you to just attack and score. How many players are above him, or is he number one in league history?
Well, my first instinct is Michael Jordan and Dwayne Wade is the competition.
Okay.
I think that's the competition. There are other players that are great at certain things. Allen Iverson is great at certain things when it comes to driving. David Thompson had a ridiculous first step when it comes to driving. But those three guys, the reason I hone in on those three guys, A, besides being three of the best like wing guards ever to lace up a pair of sneakers, B, you're asking about their driving game, right? It's really comprehensive, which means in the case of Wade and Jordan, ridiculous first step, like triple threat, they can just blow right by you. And then the ability to finish in the mid-range. I mean, Michael Jordan as a mid-range shooter was absolutely extraordinary, and I think a little bit underrated in the time he played. Just growing up around that and not hearing people say things explicitly like, "Oh yeah, this man is the greatest mid-range shooter you've ever seen." But his mid-range shooting was ridiculous, and then the finishing, which means you can get up and play through contact and finish with different hands at different angles and draw fouls. And those guys have that. Wade had that same game, both in the second level and the third level at the rim. And Shai has that as well. And the tricks and the tool. He's not as bouncy athletically as those guys are. He doesn't have that classic burst, but man, his coordination with his body and just how bendy and malleable he is. I mean, he literally gets into positions on a court, and we started the last YouTube video with it, just a couple snapshots of him that I've never seen anyone come close to getting into, and he does it regularly on his drives. He has this thing, one of his teammates was commenting on it, how flexible his knee joints are. He has this thing where he uses his back legs to brake as he goes into his deceleration, and like his knee and his ankle roll down and almost touch the floor as he's braking, and yet he's perfectly balanced. So to me, it's probably those three guys. I would love to hear anyone else nominated, but that's my hunch. My instinct is that's the group. That's like a tier.
Well, I think that's really cool because Wade and Jordan are definitely of the same ilk, right? They have the same sorts of mannerisms and drives, athleticism, things like that. Whereas Shai is closer to like Manu Ginobili. It's just like, what if we leveled up Manu Ginobili a little bit more? And that's the kind of style he has. Somebody I'd throw out there, and maybe it's just like way before driving was super in vogue in the same way we say it, but I feel like Jerry West is right there in terms of being able to pull up from the mid-range. I know, like, when I think about Oscar Robertson, he's a guy that backed down more. Like, you just get his size behind people, back down, and make passes that way. Jerry West seemed to be more of that triple threat type of position. Obviously different from what we're seeing now with the dribbling rules and whatnot. But let me throw you a West stat just for fun. Did you know that his peak free throw attempts per game in a season was 9.4? Oh, no, Ben! His career average was 9.5 free throw attempts per game. His average for his career, Jerry West has multiple, like 12 and a half free throw attempts per game at his peak, while also being the mid-range weapon he was. Jerry West, I feel like I want to toss him in here as well.
Well, we've talked about him before, and he's many broken bones and noses and things from driving into the trees. But that is an impressive stat, especially for that era from a guard to be able to get that many free throws. So, yeah, I mean, Cody, I think it's a short list. It's a short list. Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's other big Shai Gilgeous-Alexander questions I want to ask. All right, so I guess we talked about like Jokic in terms of like maybe the best offensive season ever. How close is Shai to that conversation? Or is his like not mega all-time passing holding him back from like the absolute top tier? Is he like a little step below that in terms of all-time offense?
In my head right now, he is.
Okay.
Yeah. It's still, I still have some gray area. I still want to see more in the playoffs. I still want to see more how teams defend him and how he responds. But yes, I mean, there are limitations to his passing that if he were a better passer, I think would instantly qualify him in this group. We've had this sort of a large group of GOAT offensive candidates that we've talked about on the show before, from Michael Jordan to LeBron James to Steve Nash to Jokic and a few other players. And I think he would, in my head, instantly be in that group if he had the passing, but he's probably right behind it. But I mean, when a player emerges like this, Cody, for me, it's hard to, wrangle it in and pinpoint what you're looking at, other than just to say, okay, this looks similar to one of the incredible things I've looked at. I don't know where it falls on the scale, but I know great art when I see it. Is that what Scorsese said? I don't know.
Can I throw out another Jerry West stat?
What is going on? Why is Jerry West taking over this podcast?
I think, man, Jerry West, if I were to like make a list of like potential GOAT candidates, Jerry West is a little higher than I think a lot of people have. I'm very impressed whenever I go back and watch. In 1965, Ben, in the playoffs, averaged 40.5 points per game and shot 14 free throws per game in 11 playoff games. 14 free throw attempts per game. That's absolutely absurd. Ben, let me ask you the big question everyone's waiting for. If you had an MVP vote, who would you give it to this season?
I'd probably give it to Shai, but that's the weird like voter fatigue thing, right? Mm-hmm. That's the weird little index of, I want to be able to tell the story of the season, which I don't love. But it's like, I think the harder question is if Jokic was emerging at this level as well and didn't have a prior championship and MVP, then who would I vote for? And that one's a lot harder. That one, it feels like I might vote for Jokic. I don't know. It's pretty close.
It's so tough. Part of it is I just don't know what MVP is. I think this is a multi-year long question, but I don't know what it means. No. And part of me feels like you said, like, I don't think it's just strictly who's the best player in the league. Right. I don't think that's what the MVP is. And I don't know how you like factor in the calculus of like a team's record and how good their teammates are and things like that. But I do feel like that narrative bump, like I feel like that kind of factors into it, which is this really weird nebulous space of how do you factor that into like hard hitting analysis for how good these guys are. I think the Shai take makes sense, but all I know is I'm glad I don't have an MVP vote. I don't know what I would do, Ben.
Cody, WJM in the audience has pointed out something very important, okay? Which is that Nikola Jokic is willing to shoot heaves at the buzzer, okay? Ooh. He's a real, he embodies the real spirit of basketball, all right? He's not out here trying to hack his stats and things like that. None of this modern stuff where he pretends to take a three after the buzzer goes off because he's afraid of his stats. We got to get that out of the game. What happened to the game that I love?
I don't know about I love taking half-court shots. I thought that was always fun. It's like, give me the rock. I want to toss this up there. Of course, I wasn't like having multi-million-dollar contracts to my three-point shooting percentage, but I don't know. It feels like part of the game.
Listen, Cody, listen. If you remove his heaves, he's shooting 44% from threes this season. From threes. Wow. Threes. I can't speak English. From three-point range, 44% without the heaves.
Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah. To support this show, check out patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. It's where you can get the extra content we talked about. We also have our stats leaderboard over there for players, for teams. We look at the most improved guys. I mean, maybe Cade Cunningham or Evan Mobley's going to win MIP, one of those guys. Patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. It's also just the best and easiest way to support us directly. Do you have any other questions now that we've taken care of the business and gotten to the outro and things like that? Do you have any hard-hitting questions about these players or other players or anything else in your life?
Actually, I want to twist that back to you. I feel like I've been so locked into the top teams and them playing right now. and kind of getting through the doldrums of this part of the season that I don't really have too many new takes. Is there anything you're keeping your eye on? Like what should I be watching right now that's not just like, hey, did you know Cleveland's really good?
Well, what are you looking out for? What are you looking for late playoff teams, first round playoff teams? I mean, the I mentioned this earlier about the regular season, and it's kind of funny when you hear people sort of put down the regular season or lament it. They'll say stuff like, "Yeah, there's only a few teams, blah blah blah." It's like only 8 teams make the second round, and if you go to the conference finals, it's only 4 teams. So the idea that we're going to have like 15 or 25 great NBA teams every year is a little bit strange, but also each team has their own narrative, like the arc and the shape of a team. 2 years ago, the Oklahoma City Thunder, they were out there with Poku, Alexander Pokashevsky was out there, and people were like, "Oh, what can we do with this guy?" And they were like, "Oh, the Thunder are going to be any good?" Last year, it was like Josh Giddey running around out there, and people were like, "What are we going to do with Josh Giddey?" And this year, it's like you look at the team and you can't even remember some of the players they had 2 years ago. And I think each team being able to get through that own experience is its own thing. Not everyone's going to have a championship lens. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I guess in terms of that, who do you think is going to be like, who's a frisky, not championship contending playoff team that I should spend a little bit more time on before the season?
Well, we've talked about this. The Minnesota thing is interesting. I actually think their best lineups right now are without Rudy Gobert, which is not to say they're better without Rudy Gobert available and being able to play. But I do kind of have this hot take of like, man, there's some situations where I don't know if I'd start Rudy Gobert. I want Naz Reid out there. I want some of those more dynamic shooting spacing lineups out there against certain opponents. That's an interesting team. Obviously, the Warriors with Jimmy Butler, we've talked about. That's kind of interesting. I'm really into the Lakers right now, and just that whole experiment between JJ Redick and Luka Doncic and 40-year-old LeBron James, and maybe soon to be all-star Austin Reeves. Like Austin Reeves is just playing out of his mind. He's been absolutely incredible. So I'm really into that as a late season story to kind of see how that develops and whatnot. Yeah, but yeah, the Portland Trailblazers, can they bump Phoenix for the last spot? Will Dallas ever win another game? Dallas might run out of players. I mean, anywhere you look, you can kind of find something fun.
I think where I have to go is I have to really start deep scouting for the Thinkies, Ben. I think that's got to be my last mountain to climb before the end of the season, because you're right. I haven't watched the Blazers for a while. I'm like, I probably need to get some more reps with Toumani Camara.
Wait a second. Anyone who's a longtime listener of the show right now, especially watching on YouTube or live with us, is going to be able to enjoy this moment. Cody, do you know who's playing for the Portland Trailblazers now?
Is he back?
He's back.
Is Thibault playing?
Yes.
No way. Wait, how many games has he been back?
I don't know. He played last night. He
no.
played, yeah.
He's played 2 games then.
There you go.
We are so back.
We're
so back.
Yes. We loseth a Wemby and we giveth a Matisse.
Okay, I don't like that. That hurts. That's a painful trade.
I'm saying my answer to your question would have involved the Spurs if we still had Vic for the rest of the year, but we have to wait him out.
All right, it looks like I have 28 minutes of thigh bowl to catch up on.
You're not missing a thigh bowl minute the entire way.
We're gonna see how much of a beat he's missed.
Yeah. Honestly, you're joking. You're like teasing me about it, but if you haven't seen Quentin Grimes, it's insane. I feel like part of this is because you haven't seen it, and you think, and you right, no, but you think like, oh yeah, I have in my head this idea of how a player could average 30 points a game, but it isn't. It's like, oh, the team is terrible and he's shooting 40%. No, he was like 8 for 14 from downtown last night. He's like drilling threes against double teams in people's faces. He finished with 46 last night, by the way. This is certainly a case of every team has a leading scorer. Every bad team has a leading scorer. He's not going to be able to go to a good team and be an awesome number 2 or number 3. He doesn't have that skill set, but he's been able to demonstrate this idea of like, hey, if I'm more aggressive, I have this, my shooting and something to do with using my driving game off my shooting and my pull-up game. We have a graphic that we've referenced before. I think it comes from Sports Radar about the highest release points in the league, where like Kevin Durant's is like 9'8" and Wemby's is like 9'7", and Donovan Mitchell's is insane for a guard. It's 9'1". I think Quentin Grimes has like a 9'5" release point on his shot, because remember when we had the whole bit going a couple years ago with the Knicks, how he jumps so high on every shot. Yeah. So that's actually like been a thing for them in the last couple weeks. So I feel like you're not simpatico with me on this, because it's so abstract. You haven't actually seen how insane it is to see someone score like over 30 points a game like this out of nowhere.
I mean, I think that's all cool. Love the NBA. Tyrese Maxey hasn't played a game since like March 3rd. Paul George was just shut down. Embiid's not playing anymore. McCain's obviously been out for a very long time. It's just there hasn't been a huge draw for me to throw.
No, I'm not. I'm not saying I would just throw on the Sixers by themselves. That wasn't what I was saying. I was saying if the Sixers are playing someone, then you might actually, or just Quentin. You can just pull up. You can use the tools and technology of, NBA.com and such, and you can just pull up Quentin's buckets and things like that. You know what I'm saying?
I think the question is, have the Blazers played the 76ers recently? Can I knock out two birds with one stone on this one?
The Blazers did play the 76ers, but that was before Matisse came back, and it was only a 14-point game from Grimes. It was after his 44-point night against Golden State. So
right. See, here's the issue. We're an hour and 6 minutes in. No one's listening anymore, so I'll just make people angry. Like the last two Blazers games were against the Wizards and the Raptors, and
it's tough to watch.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap up the show on that note. No, we need to wrap up the show on a positive note.
Yeah. Is Andre Drummond still getting minutes?
What was the best part of your week?
Of my week?
Well, didn't we do this a week ago?
I don't even remember. This has been a weird week. It's all kinds of weather changing and school stuff is weird, and the timing's just strange, Ben. Oh, bought some Legos for our 1-year-old, and I was never much of a Lego guy, but so I've been spending a lot of time with a 1-year-old, just like putting Legos together, and then she rips them apart, and I put them together, and it's weirdly really relaxing for somebody that's not very good at just being like, I'm going to sit here and do nothing for a second.
There you go. I love that.
Yeah,
that was great.
Thanks
for listening.
No. Yeah,
what?
you. Yeah, you.
My best part of the week?
Best part of the week.
Boy. Oh. I had a great old friend come and visit who I hadn't seen in quite a long time. Oh. Yeah. How about that?
That was phrased very Homer Odyssey sort of way.
It's one of my oldest and greatest friends.
I love that for you.
Yeah. And then he was here briefly, and then he left. And then I got sad.
What'd you do? Did you like eat some food, go on walks?
Just hung out. Just enjoyed the kind of like you and I. We just enjoyed the vibes and essence of each other's company, and then it vanished into the ether, and that I was alone again. It's back watching basketball.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Very.
No, it was great. It was great.
Good.
It's just the duality of man. It's just the juxtaposition of life.
I think what's so tough about Friends is like you have those moments that are such high spikes, but there's so many times where I'm like, I just don't have enough time to like fit all these other things, and then I kind of hermit myself into like my little 3-person life here outside of work, and I'm like, man, I don't know. I miss old friends just swinging by, I think is what I'm saying, Ben.
The drop in.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, do people still do that? Do people still do the drop in now that there's like text messaging? I bet you they don't.
I don't think so. It's a very college thing. Like you have your like the social area, and you just kind of like hang out there and drop it. I miss that. Like I wish I could just select what 15-minute section I could go and talk to some other people, and that's just not possible anymore.
For you, it's a college thing. For others, for people from the 1900s, it was a thing. It was the thing where like that was every social event was just like the drop in. You didn't know when anyone was going to come over. It was absolutely spectacular.
Do you still have people's like home phone numbers memorized from when you were a child?
Yeah. Do you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. I could go and call like so-and-so's parents right now and just invite myself over.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think those numbers are gone. I don't think they work anymore, but I have them.
I'm sure they still work. I know my folks back home still have like a landline. I bet you everyone in my hometown still over the certain age still has a landline.
All right, we got to get out of here. That was a lot of fun. Thanks everybody for listening all the way on this one, and we hope you're having a great day.